everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the TRC Podcast. We are here recording over Memorial Day weekend here, recording this on the Monday. So, long weekend, which I'm sure has been nice for everybody. Just kind of, I guess, before we start, just to go around the room a little bit, did you guys do anything interesting to for the long weekend besides watch hours and hours of auto racing yesterday?
Not particularly. Um, I've had back problems today because I watched so much racing yesterday. So I think that's just a sign that I'm getting old. I don't know. Like I can't even sit in a chair without getting sore from it. That's
Oh man.
probably not a good sign. So I will be hitting the gym later after I edit the podcast and whatnot.
I took my dog on a nice long walk today, so there was that.
Yeah, I've done a couple long dog walks the last few days. Went to a barbecue on Saturday, and yeah, not a whole lot going on, honestly.
Nice. Yeah, and you guys both, I believe, I mean, not to say where you live specifically, but I believe Ryan and Adam, you both live in areas where there's a lot of kind of, I don't know about trails, but like kind of wooded areas, so you get to see a lot of nature.
Yes, I mean for me
Not
that's
like
true. Yes, yeah.
not like exactly where I live, but I just take like a 20-30 minute road trip. There's plenty of that stuff.
Cool. Well, we are here to, we're obviously going to be talking about last night's Coca-Cola 600 a little bit. I feel like the trend of the races that we've been talking about has been one of insanity or near insanity. Just thinking about the attrition from Darlington and Kansas, and then just whatever the All-Star race was last week, and now again with the 600, a marathon to put it lightly, and we'll definitely be talking about race length a little bit down the line. But I did want to touch on first off a question, which is I pulled the triple and watched Monaco, Indy, and the Coke 600 for the first time in my life, so I'm just curious. I don't think any of you guys did the full triple. I know we talked about it yesterday, but is that something you guys have done before? Do you get enjoyment out of it? I don't know. It's a big deal for a lot of racing fans. A lot of people do try to do it, but I'm curious if that's something you guys have any connection to in particular.
Well, I woke up right as the F1 race, like, I guess went back to green. I guess they had like a red flag or something, or a safety car. I don't know what happened. Uh, Maybe was it like Mick Schumacher crashed or something? Is that what
Yeah, it was
happened?
Schumacher.
Okay. Yeah, so I woke up like right after that and then saw the rest of that F1 race, saw the whole Indy 500, and then saw all 18 hours of the Coke 600 as well. Um, and again, like I said in the opening, that's why my back is killing me today. So that it probably, I would say this year probably is the most of the three races that I've probably ever watched, honestly. I mean, normally I do watch the Indy 500, and then actually I think this was the first Coke 600 I've seen live in quite a few years because most of the time I've been working and stuff, but this year I wasn't. So yeah, I guess that's partly why I'm feeling so drained today.
Well, I have watched the triple several times in the past, but this year I just slept completely through the F1 race and woke up about 15 minutes before the Indy 500 started. And I watched that flag to flag, and I watched the Coke 600 flag to flag. So I guess in total, I watched about 8 hours of racing.
I mean, pretty much every year for me, I just watch the 500 and then the 600 because I'm not really an F1 guy at all. But yeah, I had to work in the early afternoon and got home for most of the 500, and then weirdly enough, after that, the channel that the 500 post race was on was showing showing one of the Harry Potter movies that I hadn't seen forever, so I just watched that until the 600 came on. So that was probably about 12, 13 hours of TV nonstop.
Yeah, I wasn't even intending to watch the full triple, but I ended up waking up randomly at about 7:30 my time, 7:30 Central Time, and decided why the hell not? I might as well. And I was able to find a place that was streaming the Monaco Grand Prix. I don't have cable, nor do I have an F1 TV subscription, so I found a stream. I was able to watch the whole thing. I didn't feel like it made my life much better, to tell you the truth. Though it does sound like it was a relatively interesting Grand Prix as far as Monaco goes. Since, I mean, it's a prestigious race, but I mean, I think even a lot of F1 fans will tell you it's one of the least interesting tracks on the circuit, with just zero opportunities for passing and overtaking. But interesting race. Glad to see Perez win, even though Leclerc got kind of screwed over midway through with some really bad pit calls. And then Indy 500 I've watched every year since like 2009, 2010, and Coke 600 I have, tried to catch when I can. So I watched the whole thing, and with no breaks apart from a 1 hour cat nap in the middle, because I was so drained. So yeah, about 15 hours, give or take. So before,
I guess what I'll say in addition to that is we're all tired, so don't expect much from this podcast.
right,
Right. Yeah.
honestly, I guess I kind of want to go, I guess in order, since I've talked about the triple thing here. But does anyone have any like thoughts or anything they want to share on Monaco? Like any special observations, or can we just move on to Indy?
Not really.
I mean,
I was excited to see Perez win. I like him. He's probably one of my favorite F1 drivers. But I mean, yeah, it was just like a typical, from what I saw. Again, I only saw probably the second half of it, but it was a typical parade through Monaco.
yeah, I think it's just a shame that F1's showcase event on a holiday weekend has to be that track. I mean, I know it's tradition and all that, but if they could pick a more interesting track, I feel like especially more American fans, would probably be willing to tune in. I certainly would if it was at, you know, Interlagos or something that was interesting. But I just can't get into Monaco. And then also the fact that it was shortened because it went to 2 hours. I mean, that's a little hard for me to take. But I understand F1 wants short races, and that's their tradition. So I get it from their perspective, but that kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
I did see the F1 race. I came probably the closest of anybody besides Alex to watching the whole triple, which is probably only the second or third time I've done it in my life. It was definitely really good by Monaco standards. And, I'm a person, I actually like Monaco more than most, even though, there's pretty much no passing, just because there is, I think, something to be said for the idea of having a track like that where there's so much tension and the cars do run closer together than they do on any other track at the schedule. Even if they aren't really passing, there's kind of an intensity that isn't present at some other racetracks. But at the same time, you're never going to have, I believe that there hasn't been an on-track pass for the lead at a dry Monaco race since 1985, I think Sean said. So,
Right.
I mean, there's no way around that. That's pretty bad, but I can still find enjoyment in it. And this definitely, from what I have seen, was a lot better than the usual Monaco race, but that's still a pretty low bar. The announcers were really on Sky Sports, really bitching a lot at the start about, the delay beginning to the race, which, apparently it was because of a power grid issue or whatever, in any case. But, I didn't have a big problem with it other than the fact that it played a role in the timing of the race. And And we could have a long debate about F1's rules on that and a lot of their other rules and how it compares to NASCAR. But I know that none of us are really interested in that and getting into that kind of, once again, pissing contest. So I won't go into detail on it. All I'll say is that I really hate it for Charles, what happened to him. He gets screwed every year at Monaco at his home Grand Prix, and he had it in hand, and his team cost him. And now they're talking about this might be the last Monaco race ever, which that would really be a shame if that were the case. I have nothing against Sergio Perez. I'm happy for him. But at the same time, he kind of the intrigue and strategy of the race pretty much got taken out when they decided to shorten it and end it early and not have another pit stop. That pretty much, whatever happened after that second round of pit stops where they went onto the dry tires, that pretty much locked the order in for the rest of the race. And that's, it was better than you would expect from Monaco normally, but it was still kind of a letdown in other ways. And it kind of like, I got into, into it with some of their fans and other servers, which, I shouldn't do, but it just kind of, I enjoyed it, but it reinforced a lot of, my feelings about F1 and other things that, I won't get on to that. I've said enough, but that's what I think about it.
All right, can we talk about racing now?
Well, yeah, so we can talk about the Indy 500 here. I think my perception of the Indy 500 was it was pretty middle of the road. Like, I would definitely not rank this among the best 500s I've watched. I definitely wouldn't rank it among the worst. And the kind of the ending battle, the ending 2 laps there, with Ericsson and Pato and Rosenquist making it interesting at one point was really, really great stuff. Really pissed for Dixon. I mean, it's one of those things where you can't blame that on luck. That was a driver error, and he said as much. But the guy, it feels like he's cursed, and he definitely deserves to have more than one win of these, especially after surpassing Unser's laps led total.
At this point, he's basically like Mario Andretti 2.0. Not even in the Indy 500, but I mean, if you consider all of his IndyCar accomplishments, and he's certainly not that far behind him on the win list. I don't think he'll end up catching him, but yeah, just another Mario Andretti comparison now for Dixon. Like to yeah, he got the one win early and then just complete snake bit ever since.
I mean, here's where I got to admit that I was really pulling hard for Pato. He's my guy in IndyCar, and I really wanted him to win because I thought with Perez being the Mexican driver in F1 winning, and then him winning, and then I guess we'll get to it later, but Daniel Suarez, that would have been pretty cool. Overall, I thought it was a decent race. Last year's was probably better, and it seemed like it was kind of like you couldn't go more than 30 laps or so without somebody wrecking on their own and just kind of disrupting the flow of the race. And you had guys get screwed on pit strategy like that, and other guys like Connor Daly get up front because of it. And but at the end, hats off to Ericsson. I thought he capitalized on other guys like Dixon screwing up, and I really thought Pato had him there on the last lap. They when he had position on him and then just backed out. It was just one of them had to back out, and he didn't think he had enough on him. But it would have been really nice if they could have just raced it out more like that, and if they hadn't thrown the caution. Not that he was probably going to have a shot anyway, but I'm always somebody who thinks last lap cautions, unless they're in the leader's path to the checkered flag, are just unnecessary, and they got to be able to find a way to let them race back and not have it not have it be something that interrupts trying to get the safety crews out there. It's just, I don't know.
Well, my impression is that
It was really hard to pass back in the pack. Oddly, it was easy to pass for the lead, it seemed like, but nobody could make up ground. Like when Palau ended up in the back due to getting screwed by one of the cautions. I mean, he had probably the second fastest car in the race, and he only made it back up to ninth. Throughout, that was like half the race it took him to get back to ninth place. And that's, quite a contrast to the Coke 600 where guys were coming from the back and driving through the field all night long. So that was pretty frustrating. And yeah, I was probably rooting for Pato at the end. I almost wonder if the double points offered in the race made him hesitant to throw away his second place finish, go for the win as much as he would have otherwise. I mean, I hope that's not the case, but who knows? That's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, I'll just add to that about it being easy to pass for the lead. I actually don't think it was really. I think all of those lead changes early was Dixon and Pillow as teammates just working together to save fuel. I think they even pointed that out on the broadcast. So I think it was, as far as like lead changes and that, I think it was like pretty inflated personally.
I mean, I can also see how kind of it's not like a NASCAR restrictor plate race, but they all draft off of each other, and the leader kind of has a disadvantage because of that, because they got nobody to draft off of, so it's easier to
No,
pass
that's
the
true.
leader than
Yeah.
it is like.
I'm just saying,
You know.
like, people that didn't watch the race are going to look at the sheet and see, like, I don't know how many lead changes there were, but I'm guessing there was a decent amount.
It was 38.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. And so it's like, how many of those were Dixon and Pillow just like swapping back and forth? You know what I mean? Like, anybody who didn't watch it will just look at a sheet and go by lead changes and say, oh, that must have been a great race. And it happens all the time with NASCAR races, as we talk about a lot. But as far as the race itself, like Alex said, I think it was pretty middle of the road. Like, I doubt I'm gonna remember much about it in a few months or even like next year. Just kind of, I've watched quite a few Indy 500s over the years, over the past 20 years. So I would say middle of the road for sure.
I just looked up the lead changes, and 14 of the 38 were just between Dixon and Pillow swapping.
There you go.
So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do we think of the double point system that Indy has for the Indy 500? Are we okay with it? Do we hate it? Yeah, I don't like it either.
I will always be a defender of it because I think some races do mean more than others, and it's not like if NASCAR made the Daytona 500 double points. I mean, that's a total crapshoot. You can't have like Michael McDowell last year being top 10 in points because he went Brian Vickers to win the Daytona 500. But I mean, I get it from that there's so much prestige into this one race that it kind of has to be made more special. So,
well, I get that for IndyCar, and it's like, in terms of IndyCar, and this is the way it's always been, the 500 means more than an IndyCar championship, I think. I mean, that's kind of never really changed. Whereas, with NASCAR, obviously the Cup Championship matters way more over the past, I don't know what you want to go back to, the 70s, than the Daytona 500. So, in that sense, I get it. And what I will say in defense of it is that I like double points for the Indy 500 more than double points for the IndyCar finale, which is what they used to do a lot. I don't know if they do that anymore, do they? I don't think they do.
I don't think they do anymore.
Yeah, that was really stupid. So I'll say that in favor of Indy 500 double points. But other than that, I'm not a big fan of it.
My question is, would your opinions change at all, one way or the other, if we were still running the DW12 in Indy, where it was closer to like a restrictor plate kind of crapshoot format?
I don't think it was. I thought, I mean, I remember all those races, it was like the cream would still rise to the top. I think maybe it was sort of like the the old style of plate racing where
Yeah,
you
it
could actually
wasn't.
race your way to the front.
It wasn't like
It
current
was never like
plate racing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was more. If we're comparing it to plate racing, it was more like '90s plate racing, where it's like all the
Okay, that's
best
fair.
drivers would still, like you said, cream rise at the top. But
Or even more like Atlanta, honestly.
yeah, Atlanta this year. That's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I'm kind of like, I kind of feel the way Ryan does, in that, the Indy 500, it's just by far the most prestigious race on the schedule. It takes up basically an entire month of testing and qualifying and practice and all that. So it should be rewarded more, but it's like, but in reality, what you have is, drivers who crash out or have problems really get killed in the championship. And it's like, should Marcus Ericsson really be the points leader? I mean, I don't know about that.
Probably not.
And
Well, I don't think,
But then
I
again,
don't think
it's kind. I don't think it'll last either. But IndyCar so far, I mean, it's still really early, but they're kind of having one of their years, kind of like we're having in Cup, where it's like nobody's really taken the season by the throat yet. So it remains to be seen. I don't think Ericsson's gonna last either, but if I had to guess, it's gonna be like Pillow versus Pato. Maybe Newgarden's probably gonna get back in it, but yeah.
yeah. And one other, I guess, one defense I have of the double points is that IndyCar's points format, I mean, their points breakdown is far better than they use for NASCAR, since it's actually weighted towards
For sure.
top finishers more. So in that sense, it's better than if NASCAR did double points with their stupid 1 point per position stuff. I do wish they'd get rid of the qualifying points, though. I think that's a little unnecessary, because qualifying is not racing and it shouldn't count.
I don't think they should get rid of them entirely, but get rid of what do they have it for the whole field?
I don't remember. I will say I don't mind.
It should be like just anybody who makes the final round should get some sort of points, maybe.
Yeah, that would work. I actually don't mind qualifying points for IndyCar because, I mean, let's face it, they run most of their races on road courses, and it's hard to pass.
True. And I wish they made their lap leader bonus bigger, because I think it's 1 point for taking the lead, and then 2 points for leading the most laps.
Yeah, it's got to be like 5 for most laps. No, I mean, it should be.
It should be, yeah. In a normal race, it should be 5. For this race, it should be 10.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
That's fair.
Yeah, because like to put it
on that note, NASCAR needs to bring that back too.
Yeah, they could do that in addition to stage points. Yeah,
not the 1 point for leading any lap just by staying out under caution, but the most laps led needs to come back, and it needs to be like 5 points.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
The last Indy 500 question that I have, and we'll kind of use this as a jumping off point to get into NASCAR. Jimmy Johnson, first Indy 500 started 12th. I mean, wasn't a factor all day. I think he was battling understeer. Was that right? I think that's what his car was suffering from.
He had, I think at one point he had both understeer and oversteer, which, for those that don't know, understeer is basically the equivalent of tight in NASCAR, and oversteer is the equivalent of loose in NASCAR.
That's just the kind of snooty terminology they like to use.
Yeah, just basically means the same thing, but yeah, different words they use.
Yeah, I mean, he got, it's difficult to say. I know we were kind of going back and forth. It's hard to say whether or not this was just Johnson got a dog of a car, like the worst car for Ganassi in a race in which Ganassi was the team to beat all day, or whether it was just Johnson not being used to running these cars in race trim at Indy. But
I think either way, that I think it was, the practice speeds showed that he had a good car. Like consistently through the whole month, he had a really good car. He was up there with his teammates, and then green flag drops. it's completely a different animal, like when you're in that pack and race trim, and I think that's just ultimately what threw him for a loop, and I think he was just trying to make it to the finish, and it's a shame because he got really close to making it to the finish before he crashed. I was hoping he would get there and at least finish, but just couldn't hang on to it, I guess.
Yeah, he led a couple of laps. I didn't realize he led more than one, but I guess he led two. Do we think that Johnson comes back next year for another one, or do you think this is kind of his one go at the big race, especially given that he crashed, and I know he's had some concerns about potentially getting injured at these types of races.
I'm seeing a lot of theories right now. So this past week, Trackhouse announced their Project 91 thing. Like Kimi Räikkönen's going to run Watkins Glen this year, which will be exciting. And then I guess next year they're going to run a few different races. So I've seen a lot of theories that people think Jimmy might run the Indy 500 and then do the double and do the Coke 600 in that 91 Trackhouse car. I could totally see that happening. But I don't know if he wants to come back to NASCAR. I don't know. But I think he'll probably want to do Indy again because he's just shown this desire to like want to keep improving at it, you know? So, yeah, I think he'll be back.
I think what he needs to do is just get this whole road course thing where he's, I mean, to put it nicely, just not good at road courses in IndyCar, and he just needs to focus on the ovals. And because he ran great at Texas.
I'm interested to see how he does at Iowa when that comes back later in the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love to see him do the double. I do kind of think with the way his last year in NASCAR went with the pandemic and him missing a race because of it and missing the playoffs because of that, I mean, it kind of felt like, he kind of has some unfinished business, and I would hate if that was the last we ever see of him in NASCAR.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think he would actually run well in the Gen 7 car. I think it suits him better than the Gen 6 does because it seems like it runs pretty loose and on edge, and I think that would help him. So if he came back for Trackhouse, I think he could finish in the top 10 in the Coke 600. And yeah, I think he'll definitely be back for Indy. It seems like he wants to run until he's 50. I don't know that that's realistic, but and honestly, I was disappointed in how poorly he ran. After the Texas run, I thought he would be at least a top 10 driver on speed at Indy, but he really was out to lunch the whole race. And I think he fell as far down as like 21st before he had the pit road issue put him at the end of the lead lap. So I think, like Merv said, it's just a completely different animal driving in traffic and drafting and all that compared to running laps by yourself.
Okay. Well, we'll use that as kind of like I said, use it as kind of a jumping off point to transition into NASCAR. Unless Jake, you had any thoughts to add as far as Johnson or the race in general.
Not much because I spent most of the race outside working, and then I came in. It was really hot outside, and I'm very affected. I won't get too personal, but I'm very affected by things like that. It causes me some physical discomfort, and so when I came in, all I was worried about was just getting hydrated and then showering, and then I did get out and see basically the last 20 laps after seeing maybe the first 30 before I got out, but I can't really comment too much on the race itself because of that. I'm not a big IndyCar guy, but Pato O'Ward is my favorite of the ones that are running, and so I was sort of bummed to see that he didn't win, but again, I'm not the level of fan that you guys are with it, so it's not as big of a deal for me.
Yeah, Pato will get his. I'm totally convinced. And
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think. I mean, I'm biased, but I think he's the most talented driver in the field right now, and he's just being held back by.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Probably a B tier team, and but yeah, he's going to be really, really exciting to watch for these next 10, 15 years, as long as he doesn't go to F1.
Yeah, which I hope he doesn't. I'll be honest.
I hope so. I mean, he can be 15th place driver in F1 with what McLaren has right now there, or he can contend for titles in IndyCar. I mean, that seems like a easy decision to me.
Yeah, they can. I mean, if F1 wants, they can have Herta. I mean, I don't know how that will go, but he's a bit of an enigma. I won't get into that too much, but man, yeah, he can be an exciting driver to watch, but like one of the most frustrating drivers I think I've ever laid eyes on.
Paul Tracy 2.0. Simple as that.
Okay, so Coke 600. Because of the tire issues, which we're not going to talk about because number one, they weren't like the dominant theme of the weekend, even though they did pop up, but we've also talked about the tire stuff enough in recent weeks. Because of the tire issues that were going in, I was really wondering if we were going to get a very caution-filled 600, and we did. I just did some quick scrolling around on Racing Reference. 18 cautions last night. That is the second most for a Coke 600 ever, behind 2005, which obviously had 22. It was a mess of a race. The longest green flag run we had throughout the whole race was 47 laps. And between tires failing and guys just not being able to keep their cars straight, a couple of really major accidents, and then whatever the hell, Chris Buescher's tire rod breaking and the car flipping over the tire.
That was wild.
That was wild. We talked about it in the chat. Reminded me of that Timothy Peters truck crash from a few years ago back at Texas. Wild race. So just in a broad sense, like what was your main takeaway from all of that?
I was good. Yeah. It's pretty safe to say that was a very conflicting race. It was simultaneously great and extremely frustrating. The racing was great. There is no denying that. If I was just going to, I gave the race, like I give ratings on the server on the chat for each race, like my own little official thing. And I gave it an 8. But if I was just going purely off the quality of the racing, I would say it was a 9. But I just couldn't rate any higher than 8 because of obvious reasons. But it was a great race. Adam tabulated that it had 21 on-track lead changes, which that is the most that there has been at any intermediate track going back as far as my numbers go, which is 2014. I'm quite sure it's the most there's been at any race at Charlotte since at least 2009. I'm not sure exactly. Now, given it was a 600-mile race, but still, that's more than there's been in any recent memory. Like the closest was like the Vegas race last year had 19, but that was the most. And it was a great race, and it didn't feel like, even though there were a lot of cautions, it didn't feel like it dragged that much to me, honestly, like it was that messy of a race, other than a couple of, little incidents that happened in the first, third, 3 fourths before it kind of got more jumbled at the end. So that was great. Unfortunately, in terms of the results, it was an extremely unfair event because, first off, Daniel Suarez was the best car throughout the entire race. You can make a debate on whether he was the best driver, but he certainly, in my opinion, had the fastest car. And I wanted to see him get his first win, but his pit crew just kept screwing him over. And then, we can debate on this, but, my opinion, I like Chase Briscoe. Let me say that for the record. But in my opinion, he made a very dumb move. Not just ceding the position when Suarez was well ahead of him and causing that wreck that caused the Buescher thing, which took Suarez out, which you could say it's Suarez fault or maybe say it's 50-50. But either way, it wouldn't have happened if Suarez's crew had been competent. So I was frustrated by that, but I was, still like okay feeling on the race because of Kyle Larson, which I'm not a diehard Larson fan, but he's one of my favorite drivers. And that would have been the greatest win of his career so far, bar none. That comeback he made was insane. How that he made 197 green flag passes, the most that anybody has made in a non-super speedway race this year. He had a pass differential of plus 97, which is just unbelievable. And so, I was annoyed and disappointed that he didn't win because of things that happened in the end, which
It was plus 76.
76. Sorry, my mistake. I won't go on too much longer because I know I've gone long enough, so I won't get into the whole Briscoe thing at the end and all that. But we had a bit of a time in the chat last night over because a lot of people were very upset. I wasn't as outwardly as upset as the others, just because I'm trying to get a hold of myself on that. But I was certainly disappointed at it. But as far as that goes, I'll let the others comment on the end because I've gone on long enough, and that's something I don't think we want to go into too much, anyways. But the only thing I'll say on that is that it halfway ruined what should have been a classic. I can't take away from the on-track action. I want to see more of that everywhere. But the result and some of the stuff like Michael McDowell finishing where he did after running 20th the whole race, and Kevin Harvick finishing third after he finished ninth, and then of course the elephant in the room, Denny Hamlin, and in addition to all the other guys that did run really well and didn't get the finishes they deserved. It just, like I said, just a very, very conflicting race.
Mm-hmm. I will say that I loved the Coca-Cola 600. I did not love the Coca-Cola 625. I thought the race itself, it was great. I thought the amount of parity we saw and the amount of it seemed like guys were on the edge, but just about every caution was guys just losing it on their own. Like Kyle Busch early in the race just lost it when Suarez passed him for the lead. Blaney to start that big wreck that was on him. There were only I think 2 or 3 real issues that we could kind of attribute to tires and overall, the racing, it was great. It was everything you want in a Coke 600, changing track conditions, different strategies, guys adjusting with the track, and it seemed like in the last 100 laps of the race or so, things had kind of settled down a bit, and you were getting, it was really a survival of endurance, and you had guys like Cole Custer and Stenhouse, and who else was up there? Eric Jones, who were, who hadn't run up front all race, but it looked like they were going to get good finishes, and then it all just went to hell with, Buescher too. First, we have the Suarez and Buescher wreck, and then we have the whatever the hell happened at the end with. I'm not even going to talk about the Mickey Mouse winner, but first we get Austin Dillon, who's just comes out of nowhere looking like he's going to steal another one like he did in 2017, and then ends up setting off that with 2 laps to go. Which, by the way, if if all those guys would have just either stayed out or just, I really hate when we have a late race caution and every single guy pits, and it's happened in 2020 with Chase getting screwed over, and it happened again here. It's just so not fair, The guys who I don't have a problem with overtime. I think every race should end under green, but when guys just throw away a win or just and you see it's I've always had a problem with that. And then the other thing I guess I'll rag on a little bit is it seemed like more than more than normal. We saw guys get completely screwed over by the crash clock last night. Chase and Bubba Wallace, and I think there were one or two other guys in one of those wrecks that
Byron.
Yeah, Byron got screwed over. It wasn't even that they didn't fix the damage, but it was because the clock kept running while they were. Because the caution came out right after that. That was what happened to Chase, and then something weird happened with Bubba too. Where
I don't know exactly what happened with Bubba, but apparently it was like a mistake on the team's part. Booty Barker, the crew chief, like
whatever it was,
I'd
the
have to
crash
go
clock.
back. Apparently it was like a mistake they made, but yeah, still
Crash clock needs
yeah.
to die in a fire. It needs to be 10, 15 minutes minimum if it's going to exist at all.
Yeah, I would say 10 minutes and not be cumulative or cumulative, however you say it, because that's the other big problem. It's not just how short it is. We were talking about it last night. I didn't even realize, I think a lot of people didn't realize that it's cumulative. It doesn't reset automatically.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, so guys, so what happened with Bubba is that Booty Barker did not realize that they hadn't made minimum speed yet. So what they were trying to do is they were trying to purposely go out on scuffed tires at the end of the stage and just run slow laps to avoid wearing them out too much. And he didn't realize that they never made minimum speed. So that's why the crash clock actually expired, because of that reason, even though the car was fine, which is stupid, but Booty should have known better.
It is, though, but there should never be any reason why a car that is perfectly capable of running should not be allowed to run. Between last night and between the bullshit that happened to Matt Kenseth at Kansas a while ago, it's just one of the stupidest rules that NASCAR has, in my opinion.
I would say it's like the second or third stupidest behind what is it, the pit road rule? I'm trying to figure out. A bunch of them are stupid, but there's one in particular.
Yeah, a lot of the pit
I'm trying to think of that I just can't, so I'll just pass to whoever the next is.
The whole thing about the tire falling off and the crew chief getting suspended over it, that's probably number one.
Yeah, and I think the location of the timing line at the end of pit road should be moved further out, so the guy in box number 1 doesn't get such an advantage.
It should be the yellow line, not the white line.
Yeah.
Right. It should be that everyone should have to get up to full pit road speed, not just roll 2 feet and you're out. So.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Go ahead. I was going to talk about my thoughts on the race, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, me too. My thoughts were overwhelmingly positive. I think this is the best Charlotte race since the fall of 2000, which, if I remember correctly, had
that's what I was 30. Going to say too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that one had 35 on-track lead changes or something crazy like that.
I know it had 46 in the whole race. I don't know how many were on track.
Yeah, it was a lot though. It was the majority of them were on track.
Right.
And this reminded me of that, because for the first time in 20 plus years, aero was really not an issue at Charlotte. I mean, guys could run side by side, they could run 3 wide, they could follow closely behind the car in front of them and not lose the nose. It was just amazing intermediate racing. And I think hopefully we see this from now on with the Gen 7 on intermediate tracks. And I think we will. I think Goodyear brought the right tire compound that was soft enough to have lots of fall off, and it promoted guys being able to drive through the field. And we didn't really have that much tire conservation because the runs were so short, but they had the right idea. I think really for me that the biggest thing that I took from the race is how many mistakes everybody made. And it seemed like the mistakes disproportionately affected the fastest cars, because you had Larson. I think he went to the back 4 or 5 different times, partly because
insane.
It was at least 5.
I don't,
because he started
5.
in the back, and then it was 4 more additional times he had to come from the back.
Yeah, so he drove from the back to the front 5 different times. And Suarez So Suarez had a 4-0 lead change record. So that means he took the lead on track 4 different times and was never passed for the lead. But all 4 times his pit crew screwed him over and he lost the lead under caution. So he had to drive, mid-pack to the front several times. And then Martin Truex actually had a forgotten race because he also went to the back 3 or 4 times and drove his way back into the top 10 every time and had a plus 50 pass differential. And then you had the opposite end of the spectrum, guys like Austin Dillon, who just gained he gained a handful of spots almost every time under caution, and then he coughed him back up on the track. Same with Ty Dillon. He was minus 74, I believe, in pass differential.
That's insane.
And
Jesus.
It is. And those were honest numbers because there were no green flag pit cycles to inflate passing numbers. So like he really lost 74 positions on the track, and that's yeah. And then honestly, the finish, I don't want to talk about it much either because it sucked. But I'm just glad that Austin Dillon didn't win. That's what I was afraid of because like I just mentioned, I think he ran a terrible race, to be brutally honest. And if he would have lucked into that win, I would have been very upset and it would have been complete bullshit. So Hamlin winning is a disappointment, but it could have been a lot worse in my opinion.
Yeah, Dillon winning last night would have been the equivalent to like a much, much worse, more egregious equivalent to like Abu Dhabi and F1 last year, where, everyone complained that Max Verstappen got to make a free pit stop and then pass Lewis Hamilton on, fresh tires. It would be like that, except 5,000 times worse.
What this race reminded me of, and I totally, I knew Adam was going to say fall 2000 for Charlotte. And I agree. I think this is the best race at Charlotte since then. But as far as, in this Gen 7 era, I felt like this race was kind of a hybrid of Fontana and Vegas earlier this year. Like, it had that extreme ping-ponging of Fontana with just, absurd amounts of comers and goers. And then, specifically, the Larson and Briscoe battle reminded me of Kyle and Truex at Vegas. It was shaping up, oh man, this is going to be an awesome, long run to the end battle with these guys. And then it gets thwarted by the caution, which of course was Briscoe spinning out. So a lot and it's funny because Vegas, Alex Bowman ended up winning it and he's one of my favorite drivers, but I still I was happy about that, but I kind of wanted to see that battle with Kyle and Truex play out there. And that's how I feel about this with Larson and Briscoe. I wish they would have made it, but and yeah, I obviously didn't like the whole cluster ending with Austin Dillon and all that, and don't really need to say any more about that. But as far as an overall race, I thought it was awesome. Best racing at Charlotte in a long, long time.
Yeah, it was going to be the best race of the season for me until the last 60 laps. The first thing that really hurt it was Suarez getting crashed, and then the ending really just left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, including mine, and that knocked it down. But I still can't. I've got no quarrels or qualms about the on-track racing for 98% of it. The only other issues besides the ending were just some of the rules stuff that we talked about, and some of that kind of ridiculous things that aren't really germane to the action on the track. So that's, yeah.
As far as who had the drive of the race, do we think? I think it's a toss-up between Suarez and Larson.
Larson. I feel, Ross had a good race, but
Ross did win for
right.
For ETDR, Ross was first, but that's mostly just average finish or average running position driven. Larson had an average running position of 12th and a plus 76 PAX differential is ridiculous, and ended up with a plus 125 in total when you add the positions that he lost under caution, which kind of go hand in hand, but also it's a different thing. And then Suarez ended up third in ETBR behind those two, and he had a plus 41 and a minus 54 under caution. So I think those two were probably easily the drives of the day for me.
Yeah. I thought Ross had a really good race, obviously. I mean, he led the most laps, like, by a pretty wide margin, but this was the first race this year with the two Trackhouse cars where I thought Suarez, like, outperformed him. And I thought it was outperformed him by, like, a pretty wide margin. I think a lot of Ross's laps led was just because Suarez's pit crew kept screwing him, and he had to keep restarting, 6th, 7th, it seemed like, every time after he'd be in the lead. So, yeah, this was the first race. I think this is the best race of Suarez's career, I think.
I think so, too.
Even more than Bristol Dirt last year. And at this point, I'm like, between... Everybody kind of forgot about it, but remember at Kansas, he wrecked out really early, but he drove up to, like, 3rd or something before he crashed.
Yeah.
So between that, the All-Star race, which I think he raced his way in through the Open, and I think he was probably the best driver in the All-Star race. We talked about it last week. And now this, like, these guys are trending up with the 99, and now I'm, like, pretty convinced he's going to win a race. And I would not have said that. Like, pre-Kansas, I would not have been saying that. So I think that's pretty interesting.
And I think it's not just he could win the pseudo plate race at Atlanta, or he could win.
No,
he
can win
like
legitimately, like
anywhere. Not on
anywhere.
A short track, but there's also.
I think Nashville. I might be looking at Nashville for him. I feel like that might be a good one.
Kind of think what intermediates do we have left before the chase? Like legit intermediates.
Michigan.
Pocono, Michigan.
Pocono could be, yeah.
He's always good at Pocono.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Nashville because it drives. I know it's not technically really an intermediate, but it drives a lot like one. I think it drives more like one than any other type of track. And I don't know. I feel like they're gonna be good there too. Because remember Ross last year was like the second best car to Larson. So I don't know. That's a race where I see Trackhouse doing stuff. Although at this point they're doing stuff every week, so it's kind of just like
Well, and I think the most. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think Suarez had the best race of the night because the reasons we talked about, and compared to Larson did have the self-inflicted spin out, so you can kind of blame that on him. Whereas Suarez didn't really make any mistakes. He just kept driving to the front and kept getting put in the back by his pit crew, and then arguably got wrecked by Briscoe. And yeah, I think he was the best driver. And Ross kind of had the opposite race that he's had all year, because throughout the year he's had a lot of races where he kind of just runs in the top 10 and then catches fire at the right time and ends up winning. Because this race, he led the most laps, but then ended up finishing 15th because he got wrecked at the end. So
yeah, this one was
it seemed like
analogous to Vegas.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. It seems like with the one car, they kind of missed it on that last adjustment, and once it got completely dark at nighttime, like Larson got by him, and I guess Larson and Briscoe got by him, and that's what set up that duel with Larson and Briscoe. Yeah. So it seemed like they actually, for the first time this year, kind of missed something at the end, and I think that's just a product of like the Coke 600. That's something we've always seen with that race, where the track conditions like change to an extreme level.
And
I would say that it used to be that way, but like in the last, going to our point about the difference in this car, like about a decade ago, even as well as recently as that, it was that way. But we've had several of these 600s recently where that has not been the case, where one guy has just taken the field by the throat early in the race and just dominating. Like we saw it in Truex with 2016, and then Kyle Busch in 2018, and Kyle Larson last year, where it seemed like the conventional trope didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I enjoyed most about the race yesterday was getting to actually see that return. Like that's part of the draw of the 600s and the big thing about this race. And that had disappeared for years, but it was back yesterday, and that was one of the things that really lifted it for me beyond just the quality of the action itself.
Totally, yeah. Good point.
Absolutely. And I think we can kind of segue that into I guess something that's kind of been a big topic throughout the year and throughout the past few years. But one of the best things about NASCAR for me is the day into night transition races where you have, they feel like endurance races, not just the 600, but even, when you had the Atlanta used to be a night race, and that was the 500. I guess, just
I mean,
in general,
at this
500 lap intermediate races.
at this point,
They,
it's basically what we have for that is the 600 and the Southern 500. That's it now, as far as like day
yeah,
and
and
night
that's a crying
races.
shame. And it's a crying shame, that fans seem to want this. That fans who have been fans for maybe 5 years or so, all the people who get in Jeff Gluck's Twitter replies and whatnot. These fans were not around back when NASCAR was a true test of endurance, uh, and had you had the 600, but you had other races like that throughout the year where it was a matter of being able to keep up with the track and be there at the end. And I think the fact that fans want to see races now be fans want to see the only 500-mile races be the Daytona 500 and the Southern 500 and then the 600. That's just go watch F1. Honestly, you want to see short races, go watch F1.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I also, one of the other fun marathon races was the Fontana race on Labor Day weekend that was, 500 miles in the searing heat, started in the daylight, finished at night. I mean, it sucks that it replaced the Southern 500, but that race was always cool.
Well,
But I agree with
that race normally sucked just because of like those cars were bad on intermediates, but
Oh,
can you imagine that race now? Like a summertime day into night Fontana race? That would be pretty
that would be
amazing with this
amazing.
car. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And like
Absolutely.
even like but like in terms of the length of races, yeah, I mean I prefer races to be 3.5 to 4 hours. That's kind of my sweet spot. And it seems like they're trying to keep races at 3 hours or less, which is very disappointing. Like next week's race at Gateway is only 300 miles, which, I mean, Gateway is a slow track, but that race will probably be, 2 hours and 45 minutes or something. And that's just not enough, in my opinion.
Unless it's a caution fest. Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, like, they're running it in the heat of the day in
Yeah.
St. Louis in June. Like, that's awful for the
That's the other
fans.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 1 minute when
We
you're
need
done, I'm going to go off of my soapbox rant about that. But
No, I'll let
go
I'll
ahead.
let you. You guys live in the South, so you're better equipped to talk about torturous heat. So I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, we need more night races on the schedule, or at least day into night races.
Yeah, and
Because
so like over the years I've like preferred day racing. And like I remember years ago when we used to be in the racing reference comments, I would be one of the ones like sticking up for like, I hate all these intermediate night races. But at this point there's like 3 night races in the whole series now, and I think that's way not enough. And also
yeah, it's
the,
Bristol.
the other thing that's annoying about it now is like they're all in a row, like the end of August into I guess the early part of I guess now maybe it's different because they switched. I think they switched Kansas into the first round now of the playoffs. So this year it'll be different. But like last year, there's like no night races all year, and then it's like 5 in a row, and then that's it for the whole year. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that too much. But I agree. Like I think if we're having 36 races, we should have at least like 7 night
6 to
races.
8.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't know. At this point, I feel like there's too few, and
Yeah. Gateway needs to be a night race. The second Atlanta race needs to be a night race, and one of the Kansas races needs to be
Nashville.
a night race.
Nashville, Spring,
too.
Kansas.
Does Nashville have lights?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
used to run tons of night races for
Oh,
like
yeah, okay.
nationwide and trucks. Yeah, but
Yeah,
I don't
of
know.
course.
We all know why, and I'm sure
Las Vegas too. Yeah.
Vegas. Yeah, there's plenty of tracks that have lights, and like, I have a feeling I know what Jake's about to say, but
Well, if we
a,
have,
a lot of it's because of like the TV networks, the TV windows and stuff. That's
I guess
why.
my thing is if a track has 2 dates and if that track has lights, but one of the races has got to be a night race. I'm glad they finally did that with Martinsville, but Vegas, Kansas, if they're gonna have 2 races, they got to have Atlanta. One of them's got to be a night race.
Yeah, make them different from each other.
Yeah, I agree.
Well. Anyways, yeah. What I was going to say, two things. I'll talk about the time, and then I'll mention the race length thing. But yes, the unfortunately, like the tracks in NASCAR, they're ultimately the ones that technically make the schedule, but really they're beholden to the TV. And they pretty much dictate, what time the races start. And I think for the most part, NASCAR has been pretty good recently with a lot of their decisions, but they just allow themselves to be too beholden to TV. And we're in this kind of mentality now. It's like, if I had to say one of my top 5 least favorite things in the sport right now is that this kind of mentality that there is where the people going to the races do not matter anywhere near as much as people watching on TV, which I understand that TV, the revenue is a big deal and they're trying to get in, the coveted young male demographic that's been going on forever, and I get that. But to me, getting like 1 rating point more is not worth, making everybody that's at the race and the drivers themselves and whoever miserable over it. I mean, we talked about anybody here that's been to a track on a hot day, even if it was in the evening and it had, it was just like, let's say sunset, knows just how stifling it is, just miserable. When you're sitting there in those aluminum bleachers, it's just awful. I mean, you can't enjoy it. But we know, us diehards know the story, of course, of how, they always used to run the Talladega race, the second Talladega race in July before it went into the fall. And I forget who it was. Was it Darrell Waltrip that his foot literally started to melt, or his shoe started to melt, or whatever it was inside his car. And and you've always had, of course, these older fans, like the type, like the back when men were men, people that are always say, well, let's go back to having stuff like that. Like, let's go back to having people dying from heat strokes during races and things like that happening. And that's just, ridiculous. Like, I'm with Merb. I'm sorry, just give me a couple minutes here. I know that, I go on too long sometimes, but I really want to hammer this one home. I'm passionate about this. I agree with Merb and always have that I think, really, like, ironically, there was kind of a shift to maybe too many night races, like 15, even 10 years ago, especially on intermediates.
Like the mid 2000s,
because
yeah.
Yeah, because, historically, with the exception of the 550 package, which was kind of an outlier, it was a situation where, usually you get better racing on intermediate tracks when the track is hot during the day and it's slick. And, and I certainly agree with that, but there's a limit. Like, if it gets just so bad and so hot that nobody can enjoy it, then that's too far. Like, I think that intermediates that happen during the spring and the fall should be during the day, but anything during the summer that's like south of, let's say, DC or whatever, needs to be at night. If they have lights, like, it's absolutely absurd that Richmond in August is on a Sunday. Like, the teams already don't like going there anyways. But I can tell you for certain, they are not happy about going there in the heat of the day on Sunday. And that's just, like I said, it's a balance. And, NASCAR needs to grow a spine and do something about the TV deals, but we all know that's probably not going to happen. And I was going to talk about the race length, but I know I've long gone over my time now, so I'll pass it to the next person.
I think I hammered home the race length thing good enough, so
Yeah, I don't have really much to
I speak
add
for
but
all of
that.
us there.
I mean, as far as the race lengths go, like obviously I don't want NASCAR to like start shortening races, but you know, so they did it this year with the Spring Martinsville. They cut it down 100 laps,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't
Yeah, we all had a major shit fest over that, and rightly so.
right,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I obviously wasn't in favor of that, but what I will say is that for now I'm not that worried about it because that's the only thing that they've shortened. If this was like, yeah, like 3 races a year now that they're gonna shorten, then it's like, okay, now we're starting to get into like an endemic of shortening races. But for now, I think it's kind of just more of like a worry than something that's, I guess, happening, if that makes sense. So I'm
Well,
not.
Yeah.
they haven't been shortening individual races besides Martinsville, which was an atrocity because I mean the race was bad, but I got tickets to go to it, and I was looking forward to seeing 500
Yeah,
laps of
that was messed up how
Saturday
they
night
did that.
short track racing. But uh, no, they haven't been shortening other races, but they have been replacing tracks with longer races with road courses and Gateway now, which is shorter than it should be. They had the Pocono doubleheader for a while, and now it's back to 400. But people forget it used to be 500, which it's
So that's one
there's
that
nothing wrong
like
with that.
I'm totally fine with Pocono being 400. Like, and I think I was like mad about that when I was like, prepubescent in the early, whenever they changed that. I guess it was like 2011 or something.
2012.
Yeah, okay.
2012.
All right, I guess I
when
was
they same time they repaved it.
Yeah, I remember being mad about it then, but now it's like 400 for Pocono is good for me personally, and I think it's been long enough that it's like quote unquote a tradition now. I'm not like my ass isn't chapped
Michigan too.
about
Didn't
it.
they shorten Michigan?
No, that's been 400 for. I mean,
It was just the
it used,
pandemic thing in 2020.
yeah, because they did the double
It used to
header,
be.
but
Isn't it
it's
160 now?
no, it's 400 miles. Last year
200
it was
laps.
200
Okay,
laps.
it is.
It's
For
been
some reason I thought it was down to 160.
no,
It was
it's
just
been
that they had those
I'm
two
thinking
like
of
147 lap races in 2020 just because of COVID.
which were
right,
just weird.
right. Yeah, but like
All those shortened races that year were just the arbitrary lap lengths. They didn't even feel like full races to me.
yeah, the Charlotte one was definitely weird, like 500K or whatever it was. But
It felt like a rain shortened race without the rain. Like they just ended it on an arbitrary lap in the middle of the race.
yeah, I get that.
Well,
But as far as Michigan goes, like Michigan's been 400 since probably the mid 90s because it used to be 500, and then I think somewhere in the 90s they shortened it both of them to 400, and then that's been kind of a thing now. And then Dover's been 400 since like 1998, 1997. So yeah, like all of those, I'm fine with keeping them how they are. Um, Martinsville needs to be. They both need to be 500. That's all there is to it. Like I can't defend that. That's stupid.
yeah.
But,
I'll just say
but as far as
on the sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna like wrap up what I'm saying. Like I don't think it's. I guess I already said it, but I don't. It's not something I'm like super worried about right now. I understand why people are like kind of in a frenzy about it, but it's let's just wait and see if they keep shortening races. Then it's like time for action. But as of now, like I think this is the best schedule that we've had ever in my lifetime, and I'm just trying to cherish that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, that's the
I
reason. Go
yeah, I
ahead.
agree. I agree with you, Merb, in that as long as they don't shorten any more races from here, I'm okay with the current lengths. And it doesn't seem like they're really gonna shorten too many more races. So, and by the way, Michigan has been a 400-mile race its entire existence. So
All right.
even in
Yeah.
the
So I was wrong
70s,
about
yeah.
that. Even yeah.
So that was actually their kind of novelty. Is back in the day when every race was 500 miles, they only did 400, and it was kind of a sprint. So take that for what it's worth. And honestly, the only race that I find to be obnoxiously short is Watkins Glen. I mean that race has been like
Yeah.
2 hours and
It's like an
15
Xfinity
minutes.
race.
It is. It's only eight
It's
laps
basically
longer.
the exact same length as the Xfinity race.
It's like 7
90
laps
laps.
longer. I think the Xfinity is like
90
82.
laps for Cup and 82 for and it's like that's just a joke. It should be 110 or 120 laps. So that's the only one that
That and the Bristol Dirt Race, although the Bristol Dirt Race tends to have enough cautions to kind
it
of
should
make
be
it go on.
it should be 300 or 350.
Yeah.
But other than that, and Phoenix should probably be 400. But
I loved that one year that they had the 600K at Phoenix.
yes,
That was one of the best Phoenix races that I've seen.
and that was afternoon to night. And the reason they made it 600K was because that was the year of the standardized start times. So they were not allowed to start the race late enough to go into the night unless they extended it. So they did.
Yeah. You know, I'm a big Phoenix fan, but what I would actually be in favor of at this point is if they dropped a race and then made the one race the 600K again. I think that would be like pretty good.
Yeah, I'd be down for
I would
that.
definitely would be down for that. What I was just gonna quickly
make it the
say.
finale if they're going to keep the finale there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's something
I was
special. And make it.
I was just gonna say. Yeah, I was just going to say, quickly on the race length thing that what am I going to say here? Like a few years ago, like I wouldn't say that I was for shorter races, but I was kind of, let's say, sympathetic to it back when the racing really sucked because, like I'm all for having, the most that you can get of a good product, but at the same time, you can't just sit there and tell me that that it would have been nice or good to watch, let's say, a 2018 Pocono race that was 500 miles. Like, I'm sorry, hell no, I don't want to see that. But if the racing's good, like we saw yesterday, then I'm absolutely for it.
Yeah,
I do think that some races that can be they can drag even if they're decent. I didn't feel like yesterday's race, even though it was 5 hours and 13 minutes, not including the red flag, I didn't feel like it dragged at all. There are some races, even if they are good, that I feel do drag. But yesterday was certainly not one of them. And I definitely agree. Like, I'm not really a Phoenix guy like a couple of the other guys here, but I wholeheartedly agree, whether it's one race or two race, it should be 600K, and if it's going to be the finale, it should absolutely be 600K because it's just not long enough for that big of a thing. And I think part of this trend toward shorter races that has happened, not this year, but let's say in this century, is kind of this attitude where there really isn't much point in going and having longer races because the equipment is so much more durable than it used to be. Like it used to be, they would have these really long races, because the tagline, it's the ultimate test of man and machine. It's about endurance. It's everything. And well, now, especially like with the point I brought up earlier about the 600, the last few years, where it kind of felt like it didn't have any meaning anymore. Like it almost wasn't special because it didn't even seem to be a thing where, you had change conditions where the same driver would just dominate all race. But now that we seem to maybe have that back, I'm all in favor of having the long races. And I totally agree with Ryan on that because the product is good. And if the product is good, it should make sense that you want the most of it. I only, kind of but I only just kind of said this stuff in the past because, I was so fed up with the way the action was then, but I certainly have no qualms about having long races now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The story is you can't have too much of a good thing. If the racing is great, which it is right now, keep everything exactly the way it is and just ride it until the wheels fall off. But I guess with the digital age, people have shorter attention spans, and fans who have no memories of a time when NASCAR really was like this whole test of man and machine. They don't get it, and that's their problem, not NASCAR's. I think that's kind of all we need to say on that subject.
I think the thing I'll add just at the end of it, not that there's much to add, is I think the big thing is race flow and figuring out how to preserve that and how to kind of accentuate that. And I think NASCAR is going to be conscious of that when making any changes to lengths, as well as just the fact that we know NASCAR tries to compare themselves to the stick and ball sports a lot. And stick and ball sports don't have to deal with, they don't have varying event lengths, really. Your football game is going to be 3 hours. It's going to be 4 quarters. It is a set amount of time. So while I'm personally someone who's in favor of NASCAR trying to maybe experiment a little bit with like race lengths and things like that and adding a doubleheader weekend here and there, I also know that NASCAR is going to be very, very hesitant about doing so because that puts them, for one reason or another, at a disadvantage compared to the stick and ball sports because you don't necessarily have that comfort of expecting this is how long I'm going to be. Excuse me. This is how long I'm going to be able to commit my time for this event. So I think I'm kind of with Merb in the sense that I'm not expecting NASCAR really to make many changes in the foreseeable future. And then as far as the heat thing goes, I go back to that Daytona road course race a couple of years back in, was it July or August? I can't remember. But
August.
Yeah, and where like drivers were overheating. I think JJ Haley had to go to like the hospital or something because he was so hot. I mean,
there was also the Atlanta race that year where Bubba collapsed afterwards, which was the same thing.
Right. So these teams need to, or not these teams. NASCAR needs to do, I think, a better job of taking that into consideration as well, especially with the amount of southern and even Midwestern tracks that we go to where there's going to be a lot of heat-related issues. It's miserable for fans and drivers alike, and I think whether that's just moving the start times back a few hours so that it's a transition race, afternoon to evening, or whether they make it a full-blown night, I don't really care. But I think something at least needs to be done about these early afternoon start times and make it so that the drivers are going to be racing at, the highest temperatures in a given day.
And I'm really in favor of like day into night transition. I think last night was, I mean, like I said about Ross Chastain, they led the most laps, and then once it got pitch black, dark, like they lost the handle on it, and that should be a monkey wrench that gets thrown into, routinely gets thrown into it for these teams. Like, I don't know why that's such a we really haven't seen a lot of those.
We have the 600, the Southern 500, and the Daytona 500 are really the only
day
and night races. Well,
those are the only day to night races, and I think I loved it when the championship race was a day to night transition at Homestead for a while.
Yeah,
and
I think
the 500, people will argue with me on that, but the 500 absolutely has to end at sunset. It's perfect that way.
Sorry, go ahead, finish.
Just just bring back races like when Phoenix and Atlanta and Kansas and Richmond would start at, and the Bristol night race would start at sunset and end, just bring that back.
Yeah, I was two things on that. First, Ryan, he is wrong on the Daytona 500. He's completely wrong about that, and that's an objective opinion. That's 100% fact.
Reverse card.
Yeah, but but one cool thing, like one of the very few good decisions that came out of the Brian France era, especially late, where it felt like they almost kind of admitted their mistake, was first they not only brought the Southern 500 back to its traditional date, which we all know, that was a big thing that caused a big rift in the NASCAR community when it happened, when they took that date. First, they moved it, and then they took one date away completely from Darlington. And they still had that Mother's Day, Saturday night race in Darlington, which was good. But then in 2015, they bring the Southern 500 back to Labor Day weekend. But what I thought was really cool about it was that they made it to where it's like a new and old tradition at the same time where, yes, it's on Labor Day weekend, but it also is like a hybrid in that it starts, late in the afternoon and then goes into night, where the old one was always during the day, during the scorching heat. And like it's the best of both worlds. Like you get kind of like Road America. Like that's how I feel about that being on 4th of July. I know a lot of people really hate that Daytona, is not the race anymore, and I get that. We can maybe have that discussion when that race gets here. But that was a really good way of differentiating it, and really a really cool thing that I thought they done.
Mm-hmm.
I want to we're being conscious of time, so we'll have to wrap it up soon. I want to give a couple of shout outs here as far as going back to the Coke 600 specifically. First off, another week, another round of bad luck for Tyler Reddick. Looked like he was in great position to contend for the win, and then had the tire go down near the end there. Rallied back to finish 6th after all those wrecks towards the end of the race, and is currently, as things stand right now, in the playoffs. He is 16th, right on the bubble.
Thank goodness.
He is 8 points ahead of Almirola and 22 ahead of his teammate Austin Dillon. And then also worth shouting out, I don't think we touched on him, or if we did, we only touched on him for a very short time last week, but Ricky Stenhouse. He really has come on over these last kind of month or so. And, admittedly, it's kind of funny that Stenhouse got into a little kind of kerfuffle with Kevin Harvick this week, given that, Harvick is supposedly a connection that Stenhouse can make use of to get an SHR ride next year after Almirola leaves. But he is really making a strong case for a better ride than what he has now, potentially replacing Almirola in that number 10 car, or maybe another opportunity that we don't see coming down the pipeline. What do you make of Stenhouse's little kind of hot streak here?
I might go so far to say that this is the best driving he's ever done in Cup. I guess the only thing really comparable would be like 2017 when he won those 2 plate races. I know he had some other stuff thrown in there, but yeah, I mean he's been solid for probably about a month straight now, and it's at the point. So I think what happened was JTG, they downgraded. They're now only a 1-car team, and I think that's just exactly what they needed. Instead of stretching themselves a bit thin with both cars. So yeah, but I do think he's making a case that I would take him over Priest for that 10 car. I know a lot of people think Priest is a shoe-in for that, but I would take Stenhouse. I mean, I would probably take some other people over Stenhouse, but if it did happen to come down to those two being the I guess they're both represented by Harvick's whatever agency thing. If it comes down to Stenhouse or Priest, I'm taking Stenhouse 10 times out of 10 over Priest, I think, at this point for the 10 car.
Yeah, I was going to say on him, I'm not a fan of Stenhouse per se, but I'm closer to, I guess, saying being a supporter of his than anybody else here. He's not the most popular guy either, I guess, among, fans or drivers, and it's somewhat justifiable, but I enjoy his racing style when he is doing well. I think he makes things more interesting, even if he goes a little bit too far sometimes. But I'm not going to dispute the fact that I think he's been pretty much a career underachiever. I think that he has top 15 talent. I'm not going to say that he's a top tier talent, but I think he could have been a perennial top 15 driver. But I don't know this. This could just be me talking out, my ass, but I think that he's always been kind of lazy. And I think, he just kind of has a pattern where if the car is fast off the truck, then, he'll do well and usually finish well. But if he's not and he's just runs 20th, he's just going to run there the whole time. But I think maybe in addition to the JTG thing that you mentioned, I think he's finally coming to the realization that it's now or never. This is kind of a crossroads for him, and he needs to do something and make the most of it. And so, you can't really argue with the results. He had 2 top 10s all of last year, 2021, an entire season, 2 top 10s. He's had 4 in a row now, and that's not including the fact that he's been pretty unlucky in a lot of other races where he could have finished much better as well. So that's my take on it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been saying it pretty much every week. I've been touching on it, but he has been, even through his first 10 or so races of this year, he was very unlucky and came out much better in the ratings than he was finishing. And now he's kind of getting those finishes. And the weird thing that's happening is because he's getting the finishes now, it's kind of one of the inconsistencies on a week-to-week basis with my system is that because he's with a single-car team, it, in sort of a backwards way, rewards him when he doesn't run well and hurts him when he does run well in terms of his equipment strength, because the equipment strength can only be based on the average running position collectively of the team. So if he runs 13th in a race, then it's going to say he had a 13th place car equipment-wise. But if he runs 25th, then it's going to say he had a 25th place car equipment-wise, and the equipment rating will compensate for that by giving him more than he would if he ran 13th. But his season's kind of evening out. Right now he's 13th in ETDR for the season, which I think a lot of people would not expect. But if he just had the same luck that he's had the last couple of weeks over the course of the whole season, I mean, it's not too crazy to think about. So yeah, I think in general, he's a driver who kind of puts himself in bad situations by being too aggressive. But this year, it seems like all the bad luck he had was not of his doing, and he hasn't been he hasn't been Wrecky Spinhouse this year. So, props to him for that. And he's definitely a Cup Series level driver who shouldn't be. I guess there's speculation JTG might shut down after this year, and either Trackhouse gets a third charter, or maybe Dale Jr. moves to Cup.
You got to remember that what was their name? I can't pronounce the name. Tad Geschifter, or however you say it. They're probably going to shutter a lot of sponsors over to some team, because remember, he's works in the advertising business. That's why they've always been able to get all those sponsors on that car. So that's a lucrative operation that could end up moving to someone else.
Maybe they'll just go with him to Stewart Haas or whatever. If Harvick if grumpy old man Harvick gives his blessing. So, let's, I guess, kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, we'll do. We're just gonna get straight into predictions. Gateway next week. Going to be a bit of a wild card. I don't know about a major wild card, because there are a number of drivers who will have experience from running it in past nationwide races, and then past Truck Series races, obviously, for some. But first time Cup has ever run here. So I am curious what your picks are going to be for this weekend here at Gateway.
So the thing for me is that I think the guys who are going to look the best at Gateway is the guys that have run trucks there over the past. I guess it came back to the truck schedule in like 2014. And I think Bubba, Custer, Bell, and maybe there's another Cup driver, maybe Jones, all won races there in the truck series. So my pick for months has been Christopher Bell for this. And I think it just correlates with like just how fast he's been the past maybe month or so or two. Combining that with I think it's a track that's like right up his alley. We've seen how good he's been at Loudon in the Cup Series so far. I think that's probably been his best track. Richmond as well. And if there's any correlation from other tracks on the Cup schedule to Gateway, it's those. So, yeah, I'm riding Bell all the way to Gateway. I've been saying that for months.
I'm going to go with, since he seems like he's really been hitting his stride lately, just hasn't won since early in the season, Kyle Larson. I'm not a fan of Larson because not even really to do with the certain incident a few years ago, but just because him being Chase's teammate now. It's kind of an in-house rivalry like it was with Jimmy and Jeff. But I felt bad for him last night. Honestly, it was the first time probably since I used to root for him at Ganassi that I felt bad for him and with something happening to him. And I think he's really been doing everything but win over the past month or so. And I think he gets it done. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a total domination like he did at Nashville last year at the first race at a new track. I don't think he'll just lead like every lap like he did, but I think this could be a race where he's just kind of the best car from the start.
Yeah, my pick is going to be Ross Chastain because, one, he's good everywhere. And also, I think that what happened at Phoenix is going to correlate very strongly with what is happening at Gateway. And Ross was one of the best cars there. So I'm going to go with him. But I also do think Christopher Bell is he's not even really a sleeper pick. He's just a good pick. So either of them.
I'll add to that real quick about Ross. Ross was the other guy that won there in trucks that I'm forgetting. So yeah, he has a truck.
Yeah, the wheel
was still
imperfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
How could I forget?
Go ahead, Jake.
6.86 mile track. That was also Gate. No, that was IRP. Never mind.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, there's no way you can possibly keep up with it. But yeah, as far as I go, I mean, there isn't really much history to go off of, none in Cup, so I can't give you like some logical, fact-backed prediction. But I'm just going to kind of go off of half wishful thinking and then half kind of intuition, and I'm going to say Alex Bowman because I just feel like this is the kind of weekend where he
Rip Gateway.
typically.
Rip F in the chat for Gateway.
Well, what I was going to say, this is the kind of weekend I think where he could thrive because, for one, from what I can understand and have read, no one really wants to be there this weekend. The teams basically have got a stick up their ass about going to Gateway. They don't like it. They don't like the area. They don't want to be there. I have a feeling that this is going to be a race. If there's going to be a race that goes really clean, with a lot of green flag racing, I think it'll be this one because I feel like everyone just kind of wants to get it over with. It's almost like an afterthought. And so that's the kind of race where he typically does well. And yeah, I was going to say something else, but in the time that it'll take me to remember it will be too long for this podcast. So I guess I'm just going to have to end it there.
Yeah, so I just pulled it up for reference. The list of active Cup Series drivers who have won truck races at Gateway are, don't laugh, I'm going to count him because he's run races this year, Greg Biffle, Kevin Harvick, Bubba Wallace, Cole Custer, Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain, and Justin Haley. However, that being said, I'm not going to pick any of them, although this guy did run at Gateway in the trucks. I'm going to go Tyler Reddick. I think that this weekend, where he suffered the bad luck but was actually able to come back from it a little bit and got a good finish out of the whole deal, I think that's going to rejuvenate him a little bit. He's run pretty well there in the trucks, even if he hasn't gotten a victory. He's led laps in, I think, every single start he's run there at Gateway for when he was running with Keselowski. So I don't know. I kind of have a feeling, I think just as Merv kind of has a feeling that it's going to be Bell's weekend, I think this might be Reddick's time to get the monkey off his back and get that first victory. So we'll see, though. It seems very wide open. All right. Well, if any last thoughts, anything else anyone wants to add before we call it a night here?
Yes, I want to give a quick shout out to Cody Ware, who finished 18th in the race. Thank you.
Shout
Nice.
out Cody.
Cody Ware, and shout out Parker Kligerman again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Responding to Twitter.
I guess I should give a thank you to Avery Hage, is that how it's pronounced, for kind of retweeting a lot of our stuff and putting us out there. I know Sean's connected with him, so thanks Sean too for that. I know he's listening right now.
Yeah.
Just any kind of visibility that we can get when, you know, we're kind of just starting out. So we need kind of anybody who can get us out there.
Much appreciated. Okay. Well, on that note, we'll see you all next weekend after what I'm sure will be another fun and eventful race at Gateway. Until then, take care and have a great rest of your week.